Hey everybody, we're here today at the Ringold Fish Hatchery. We're with Mike. Mike, thanks for showing us around.
Yeah.
We're gonna see some coho today, some tiger muskies, some steelhead action. They did a little bit of spawning while we were here, so it's pretty cool to see and learn. So we hope everybody watches the video, enjoys the video. Thanks to Matt and Nick, Dead Worm Fishing, for coming out.
Well, I mean, we're kind of starting at the end and working our way forward.
Yeah.
But we're here. I mean, I'm sure you can.
So we know this is the warm water.
This
ponds,
used to be considered the warm water side or Meesburg side of Ringold Meesburg.
Okay.
It still is kind of designated as our warm water side. So in effect, you could say we're raising warm water coho. Not really. No, when I came here in 07, we raised bass, crappie, bluegill. We dabbled with walleye for a few years.
Okay.
You know, the big driver was crappie. Warm water pond management is a lot different than rainbow or salmonids, if you will.
Yeah.
Trout, you spawn them, you hatch them, you grow them. Yeah. You know, usually end up with lots of extras. You know, salmon, well, we're surplus and more salmon than we spawn. You know, so, you know, egg survival is 95%.
And so do you guys not currently have any warm water species here?
We have tiger muskies.
Still do tiger muskies,
yeah.
Okay.
And I'll show you those today. But yeah, the warm water thing is very interesting. You're fertilizing the pond. You're feeding the pond rather than the fish.
This first section that we're touring is the old warm water species area. They're no longer growing the warm water species in this area, but are using it to grow coho salmon. It's a really great thing to help improve the runs of coho salmon and hopefully make it so we have a decent run and are able to fish for coho salmon in the mid to upper Columbia River. We just happened to show up when it was feeding time for these coho salmon.
Some out there. Just beyond my net. We got some. That's the way you can see them a little bit better. And what we'll do is let them go night-night.
So what is that stuff there?
Anesthetic, basically we use it to clip fish through the marking trailers. It's basically an anesthetic that kind of, as you can see, they're starting to get a little sleepy.
Starting to get a woozy there.
Yeah, so as you can see, these are 100% marked. All their adiposes are identified as a hatchery fish. You can see the par marks on these coho. These coho are like ready to go. We release them at 15 to the pound. Here, this is kind of a cool feature too. To put it on the measuring board so people can kind of get a perspective on the length of those coho. Yeah, cool. Cute little coho par.
So about how old are these fish right here?
So surprisingly, these are like yearling fish. So yeah, those will sink, but they'll sit there, they'll recover. You can overdose them with the anesthetic if you're not careful on how long they're in it. But it's a great tool for us as hatchery folks to,
So you're not
yeah, I mean,
stressing them out.
the problem with using anesthetic on fish that are of food grade, or say we were recycling them into the river system, is that there's a withdrawal period. So oftentimes that's why we get into kill spawning adults anymore than back in the day when I started. There was no real FDA approval with the anesthetic, and they were just evolving, if you will. There's a lot more to raising fish than one might think.
Yeah,
yeah.
I think a lot of people don't quite understand that it's not just throwing fish in a pond and hoping that it.
No, it's not. I mean, living and working in an area of agriculture such as we are, we have a lot of farmers around our area. We got cherry farmers, we got apple farmers, we got wheat, corn, potatoes, carrots, you name it. I mean, any one of those farmers can tell you it's not just plant the seed and it will grow.
Exactly.
Fish is like farming.
Yeah.
I mean, no different than apples and pests. You have pests with fish. Apples with disease. You have disease with fish.
Parasite.
Those are what we call pests. More than anything. You've got, predators such as deer, elk, the neighbors picking your fruit or whatever. The same applies in a hatchery when it comes to the overhead netting.
Yeah.
We don't want the birds to consume our fish. Once we let them go, then they're kind of on their own, if you will. So, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot goes into it than one might think. It's like farming, if you will, but aquaculture farming versus dryland wheat, irrigated crops. We here raise a lot of segregated hatchery origin fish. These are all segregated. They're not integrated, if you will, with wild genetics. Same with our steelhead, but our steelhead are ESA listed stock. They're part of that Upper Columbia Wells stock, if you will. And so right now, I've got a guy going to Wells to go get adults to try to integrate our program, if you will. But due to the fishery, we manage it as a segregated fishery. It's a hatchery retention only at RV here at Ringold, and I'll show you these smolts that we're releasing right now and show you those RV marks, and the fish look great this year. We're about done, and I wanted to make sure we had a few extras to show you guys what we go through in terms of sampling those on their outward migration. But yeah, there's a lot to show you guys today in terms of our facility and what we do here, in terms of how we do what we can to benefit you guys to go out and fish. Yeah, awesome.
These fish collection turbines are used in the canal systems to try to catch invasive species. They mainly catch panfish, but of course they are also looking for species such as pike, which they don't want to get into the Columbia River system and decimate the salmon and steelhead populations worse than they already are.
Are we able to go see one of these running?
Yeah, it's running in the trap right down
Okay.
right now.
Awesome.
You guys want to go over and take a look at it?
Yeah.
These are what we call hatching trays or feed stacks. We use these a lot at Priest and other facilities for salmon and steelhead production. We have some right here that they're just eyed up, and they'll probably get handled tomorrow or the next day. And this is partly why I had you guys come here when you did. So basically, you can see the white ones. Those are the ones that have turned or otherwise unfertilized or non-viable. But these eggs are ready to be shocked in a way. It's really tough to see the eye pretty close. You can actually see the eyes inside the egg.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, this is part of our first group of steelhead that we took earlier this year. These were spawned the day before St. Patrick's Day, the 16th, and tomorrow or Friday we'll go through and more or less just kind of shake them up. And what that does is it helps any other eggs that are otherwise non-fertilized turn white in about a 24-hour time frame. And then we can go through and pick each one of those den ones out by hand, and then we inventory what we got left by weight, if you will, and then set them down about 10,000 per tray to hatch out. So yeah, and you can see we started here. We got to take 1, take 2, take 3. Today we'll have to take 4, and they'll probably spawn again next week as well. So these are all well stocked. So, and or Ringold, if you will, because we started down this road of spawning ourselves and fish returning to this facility about 6 or 7 years ago. And part of that stemmed from the uncertainty of being able to get eggs from other facilities or broodstock, and also the inconsistency of the number of fish that we were getting from the other facilities. Now, because of low steelhead returns, we're relying heavily on those other facilities, not only for eggs, but for broodstock as well. And some other facilities are in the same situation as well. You know, steelhead returns, as you well know, are down across the state. You know, some of that's attributed to ocean conditions or where those steelhead may go. Obviously, there's predation, there's habitat loss, there's, you know, hydro. You know, a lot of different things can play or against the survival of steelhead than there are for it. So we're doing our part to try to conserve and put out a product that will continue to return, hopefully in good numbers to allow fishery opportunities. So we experienced an outbreak of ick, which is common in aquarium fish and salmon and trout production. Our spring water is fairly warm, and so with those warmer water temperatures, things kind of grow a lot faster in terms of pest control, pest management, and so we didn't quite identify it soon enough, and then once we did, we treated, and our treatment was ineffective because it had already spread so far that it was. So it is a unique, it's a unique creature. You can't kill it on the fish, otherwise you kill the fish. But
It's a fungus, right?
No, it's an external parasite.
Yeah, it's
And once it gets on the gills of fish, it can be extremely detrimental. Particularly steelhead are very vulnerable to it. Chinook aren't quite as vulnerable to it. They're a lot more tolerant to it. But say steelhead, for instance, if it gets on them, and it's prevalent in just about any water system. But in free-flowing stretch of the Columbia River, guaranteed you'll find it on just about any fish out there, but at low levels because it's constantly moving. And a lot of times it can be identified early on just by the behavior of the fish. And this happened at a time of year that we have a lot of inversions here in the basin, a lot of fog, a lot of low light condition days. It was in December when it happened. And frosty, we had dense fog. Fish, they feed fine. It was great. But once you start seeing a little bit of flashing and jumping activity, then it's like, okay, something's wrong. Well, by the time we identified it was wrong, that ick hit every fish in that pond had ick present on it. Yeah. And we went from a very few dead per day to thousands in just a matter of a week. If we did not have this segregated fishery specific to Ringold stock here, there would not be a steelhead fishery from the Tri-Cities up to the Wenatchee. The Wenatchee has had some fisheries in the past in the Met now, but when was the last time they were open for fishing? It's been a few years because of those runs declining. So, and we didn't have a fishery this year here.
no, yeah.
I mean, and a lot of it had to do with that ick outbreak, because 80% of the steelhead that return to this facility and the wells of that stock in the Wenatchee, they're all kind of derivative of the same stock, the upper Columbia stock of steelhead. 80% of them come back as one salts. So they're those typical, 5 to 6 pounders, that you see, 4 to 6. Only 20% return as 2 salts, which are, those 9 to 13 pounders. So we're getting a few 2 salts this year, but very few 1 salts. So we've been doing a lot of spawning of our fall Chinook too here as of recently. We've increased our production by 1 million rights to be released every year. You know, this isn't all just for steelhead.
So, she getting the buckets ready for?
So we're going to take some eggs today.
Okay.
We'll take some virology sampling as well. Basically, we take a little sample of the ovarian fluid and the kidney and the spleen. We ship those samples to Olympia. It's kind of standard operating procedure for hatcheries to do a subsample of all their adults from a virology perspective to see if they're carrying any disease. So what Shauna's doing over there with the yellow wand is she's scanning each fish for pit tag, and she'll also
this.
yeah, go ahead. Those are just pond marks. You got a tag?
No, it's like the third one.
Smell yummy, don't they?
Oh, this one. Great.
They came out of our holding area, basically. So since we're kind of short on males this year, we're reusing a lot of the males as surrogates. So we're holding on to all of our males. But after spawning them once or twice or in holding, they don't last long on our water. Obviously, they succumb to fungus or. So this is no different than our crews that go out here on the reach. I don't know if you've heard of this or not, but we do a lot of carcass surveying.
Yeah, I've seen them. I've been out fishing while they're doing it. They get on the shorelines and they're looking for the.
That's all in an effort to determine how many, hatchery origin fish might be out there spawning with the natural population, both from here, freeze, but also natural origin fish as well.
Yep, male.
Someone did.
There's another Wells male.
Look what she's got, I guess.
Right in the mouth.
That looks like a male. What was that there?
It's just ovarian fluid, so we try to collect a half a cc per fish, and then we'll send this in as part of our kidney spleen samples for virus testing. Pretty big a tag.
I believe they are.
I thought we brought down 1 gallon Ziploc bags.
We definitely did something like that.
Took up the tubes.
Yeah, you're nothing to do with that.
And you're probably asking why we're not fertilizing them here. Because once they're fertilized, we found that if we fertilize them now and then transport them down there, that they suffer higher mortality than if we just bag them and put the milk cup, haul it down there, then make the combination We have much higher survival.
I see what you're saying.
Just that.
Come on out. Yep. I don't think we're doing much with that one. Nope. It's garbage.
So what was the condition with that one there?
We call it a non-viable.
Okay.
She probably water hardened in molding.
Gotcha.
She probably ripened up 2 days after we spawned last week. You know, so
Yeah.
unfortunately, you know, you can only spawn, you can't spawn every day based on virology. We want to try to get our virology in as much as we can. So sometimes fish don't wait, but you know, we do what we can. We don't just put them in the tray. We add the milk to the eggs to fertilize it. We add a little bit of water to that egg and milk solution. It aids in motility and mobility of the milk to find the microbiology in the egg and thus create cell division and create the offspring. We allow it to sit for a couple minutes like that, and then we'll combine two female with female, male. So if one male is non-viable or not as mobile as the other one, we're getting maximum fertilization, if you will. But trying to reduce the number of brothers and sisters that we're creating by doing one-to-one. Follow me?
Yep.
Once that's done, then we drain off the eggs, excess milk and fluid, and then we set them in a tray. And when doing so, we set them in a disinfection, light disinfection solution that otherwise will get absorbed when the egg starts to swell and that cell division is happening rather rapidly. It'll swell, and that's where we call water harden. We want it to water harden by taking in a light solution of iodine solution. That helps reduce disease, bacteria, many things. It's been proven over the years. So, to where we can have a healthy sac fry that isn't hatched with potential virus or bacteria. We usually let it sit in that iodine solution for an hour, the water harden, and then we just what we call push the trays in. An hour later, go down, push the trays in, and then you start recirculating water through it and let that cell division to continue to occur. And then eventually, 2 weeks later, you get the eyes, you shock or rough handle, pick the dead, set them down, and then they start to hatch a week later. And then about 2 weeks later, you pond, initiate feed. Yeah, it's a full process.
Awesome.
So we're taking the eggs now that will be released that's occurring now.
Yeah.
So it's a full year. I mean, there's no downtime. There's always something going on.
Was a word.
Do our thing. You guys know what I'm doing here, right?
You said that you were.
This is the virology sample
Yeah,
there.
but what part of the anatomy is this?
Liver?
That's the kidney. This is your spleen. The most highest common places where virus may. So basically, here's your liver, right there, right by the heart. Here's your liver. Here's part of the pyloric ceca, and then your heart sits up in here, which in most cases is still beating. Thought it was beating. Yeah. It's got a little beat to it. So. And here's your air bladder, of course. Just pull that out of the way. And then we hashtag it. To get a chunk of that kidney out. There's your spleen. You just need about a gram or so of that. Okay, one more.
So you only take the kidney and the spleen?
Yeah. And the ovarian fluid. Yeah, those are the most likely places if virus is going to be detected in the organs. Those are the most likely places that they are to occur. So what I'll do is I'll just seal that whirl pack up and go get another one for our next 4. Tiger muskies. You can see these are just perfect little tiger muskie morsels.
Oh yeah.
But also, at the end of the day, we separate out a portion specifically for the kids fishing event. The Richland Rod and Gun Club, Hapo Center, Kids Fishing Pond, Lunker Lake,
Okay.
as well as Powerline Lake gets some. So
Okay.
yeah. So obviously, we still have a couple weeks before these rainbow. It might be a little wise. Might need to change.
Stubborn.
See, they're chunky little guys so far.
Not bad size.
We still got a month to go, so yeah, the crew's doing a good job getting them to size. It'll be about a pound a piece when we put them in the pond.
Nice.
Yeah.
Kids are gonna have fun.
Oh yeah. We got about 4,000 for the pond this year. We got about 650 over here. If I put on 100 pieces of ribbon and it saves 10 fish, that's worth my time, you know. So it's just the magnitude of trying to net something this large is difficult and expensive. And for the short duration these fish are in here, is it really worth it? It would cost millions to net this structure. This is a 9-acre rearing pond. It's one of the largest rearing ponds in the state of Washington at any hatchery that we have of the 83 that are operating. You know, all the water that comes through here is spring fed, spring water. And by the time we actually start releasing these fish, we'll be putting over 15,000 gallons a minute of water through this.
Wow.
Which is a lot, yeah. But you can kind of see the main channel there, and then this upwell drains into that. We got two platforms for reuse water that kind of drain into that channel, and then you can kind of see the defined depression from the other upwells, so fish will find their way out. But with these fall Chinook in this pond, it's amazing. They're climbing the walls when they want out, and when we let them go, usually we're halfway draw the pond down and you don't see any fish left. They just want to go now. We have the electric fence around the edges to dissuade wading birds. But when these fish want to go, what's really difficult to grasp is we see starlings like cruising the shoreline, literally eating brights. It's like, how do you prevent starlings from eating? I've never seen a starling eat a salmon, and they will. They're very opportunistic feeders, and that's how badly these fish want out. By the time we let them go, they're literally just like almost beaching themselves, looking for a way downstream. They have that much will and desire to want to go to the ocean. It's pretty impressive to see really cool. The biology of how fish work that way. So.
Oh wow, look at those little.
Yes, we're feeding them rainbow now, they'll switch over to fish that otherwise are less desired fish in these lakes and reservoirs, such as perch, pike minnow, suckers, carp, things of that nature, because these tigers don't like deep moving water. They like shallow bays with structure and vegetation, because they're an ambush more than anything. The only reason why we feed them rainbow here is, one, it's a readily accessible food source that we can get from our neighboring hatchery facility. And it's basically, it's cheaper. We could feed these pelleted food, but believe it or not, it's 3 times cheaper for us to put pelleted food into rainbow and feed the rainbow than to feed pelleted food to the tiger muskies to achieve the same size. And the reason for that is once the tiger muskies get to a certain size and density, we have to keep them pretty light. And being an ambush predator, they just kind of sit there. So you can't just broadcast food 3 times a day and expect them to eat it.
Yeah.
It's got to like sink and fall at a certain rate for them to grab it. And it's got to be like right in front of them. For us. That's why we start them out in these circulars. So what's nice about these is we've got some over here with some rainbow in them right now. This is our, this one's empty up in here. This one's empty. So what we do, you can see the feeders that we have on these tanks. We call these belt feeders. We don't have them on these rainbow here. This is the last remaining group that we'll feed out to these tiger muskies. But we still have like a pond and a half up at the hatchery. We'll feed these tigers before we get into these. Okay. But we'll also separate out that group for the kids fishing it in from the group up there, since they're close to where we want them to be. Okay. But what we do when the tigers are in these circulars is we feed them pelleted food up until around January, February. But then they outgrow these tanks. We gotta put them somewhere else. And when we do, to feed them with a belt feeder application on a long raceway like that, we would need 30 belt feeders. But also the food just drops, it sinks. And here the food spins. Gives them more opportunity to capture that food than to just drop and sink. We plant about 6,000 tiger muskies annually out of this facility. 7 different lakes and reservoirs. Merwin, Mayfield, over on the west side. Lake Taps, which is up out of Auburn, Enumclaw area. We plant Evergreen Reservoir, which is in Grant County. That's our closest one. We plant Silver and Newman, which are, Silver's over by Airway Heights. Newman's right there on the Idaho border, basically, Newman Lake out of Spokane. And then Curler, which is way up north. So those fish are proportionally planted between those lakes based on fish per acre rate. So at very light densities in each one of those lakes and reservoirs of tiger muskies. So, but as I mentioned, those tigers inhabit habitat that otherwise supports their diet plan, which they'll get stocked starting in May, end of April, the month of May. We'll stock all these out. So these fish grow about 1 inch per month. We'll be going to Wyoming in June to get our other fish. So basically, there again, not in May, we're getting them in June. So not a lot of overlap there between. Same with the steelhead. We're taking the eggs today, but we're releasing the smolts today. So not a whole lot of overlap there.
Just gives you enough time to
right.
Stuff.
The only reprieve we get really is the Chinook, but we get the Chinook in May, we release them mid to late June, but then we turn around and start trapping in September, and then that continues on until about early December or so for the Chinook, but doesn't necessarily stop for the Coho or the Steelhead. We're year-round, and so that's where most facilities, and how most facilities operate, is to maximize the use of the facility as much as possible, whether it be for conservation or for recreational opportunities.
And
I'll show you some big giant.
how long are you guys trapping throughout the year? I mean, is it?
So we trap starting typically Labor Day. We start trapping Labor Day weekend.
Okay.
And then we'll continue to trap up until typically mid-December.
Okay.
And we'll shut down for the winter, but Valentine's Day is generally when we start trapping for adult steelhead. We generally don't start seeing them until the last week of February, first week of March, but then March is all steelhead month. Let's go grab that net over there behind you. See if we can net up one of these rainbow. Yeah, there's a nice Ringold rainbow. Yeah, aren't those beautiful?
Those are beautiful.
We got 30 or so.
Thanks for watching, guys, and hopefully you learned something today.
Mike, thanks for having us out.
Yeah,
thank you,
no
Mike.
problem at all. Thank you guys for coming.
Yeah.
Hope you guys learned something today.
I did.
Oh, yeah.
I did. It was,
We
yeah, it was
learned a
good. It was
lot.
awesome. I
Good.
appreciate it.
Good to know.
Cool.